Here we are live. Joe Moore, Psychedelic Say, Alyssa Gursky. How are you today?
I am really glad to be here. Doing pretty good.
Yeah, excited to have you. We recently were able to record for the Psychedelic Say podcast that should be coming out somewhat soon. So, folks, if you love this one, stay tuned when you get more. So, we've known each other for a while. I think I first learned about you on stage at a Daniel McQueen kind of, was it a DMTX launch event or what was that event? Do you remember?
Oh my
Boulder
gosh, we're
Theater.
talking 7 or 8 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was just a smaller psychedelic symposium because
Mm-hmm.
wasn't Dennis McKenna one of the
Dennis was there.
keynotes?
Yep.
Yeah, and then they did a breath work after. I think it was just it might have been fundraising for DMTX, but Lord knows.
That's right. He was coining new terms. He was experimenting with language at that point, like cyber cannabis or something, and then like some
Yeah,
other DMT word, which is interesting at the time. But the DMTX work continues. It's really interesting. Um,
yeah.
and, and the cannabis work has obviously really expanded, which is cool. Have you have you ever encountered that, like people wanting to do psychotherapy under cannabis?
Definitely,
Mm.
definitely. I had done a little bit of training with both. It was a somatic focus, and it brought ketamine and cannabis in as separate options. So I love offering cannabis to people who are super excited about things like ketamine therapy,
Mm-hmm.
but the new drug piece scares them, or being altered with another person in the room feels overwhelming. Cannabis is a really great starting place because it is so readily available. People typically have better relationships with it, and it introduces, like, what is it like to be high in the room? What is it like to be altered and pay attention to your inner world in a new way? Just because of the familiarity, for some people, cannabis can be a great place to do an intro.
Right. It's people underestimate it often, right? It's like, oh, we need this new, super incredibly powerful, destabilizing thing. Or what about
Yeah.
something you're maybe familiar with? You just haven't worked with it this way. Um, it's funny.
Something really interesting that I notice is people being uh, hitting a wall where they're like, oh no, cannabis makes me really anxious and paranoid, or it makes me always think about this thing, or I get really self-conscious. And that is usually where I'll say, even if it's a friend, like, let's sit together. Like, let's actually, if you're open, and especially with clients, like, that's actually a good thing. That can be worked through. And I feel like people who don't really know the map of the nervous system, or even just the orientation of psychedelic therapy, that if a drug is bringing up a state, it needs to be felt.
Hmm.
Or not that it needs to be felt, but if it is felt, there can be a release on the other side, space for something more, grounded on the other side. But I love when people, there are two things. It's, this drug always makes me anxious, or I'm not an artist. Those are the two things where I'm like cracking my neck. I'm like, all right, let's fucking go.
That's great. So
Yeah.
your training is primarily in art therapy, is that right? A little bit of somatics, maybe?
hmm So my master's degree is in clinical mental health counseling, concentrating in transpersonal art therapy. So it was physically the closest degree that I could get to psychedelic art therapy.
Mm.
But having that mindfulness focus, the body is just such an integral tool.
Hmm. It's interesting. What's like the fundamental, like some people might not understand that art therapy is a real thing. Like when you explain it
Yeah.
to somebody who's not really familiar, how do you like to do that?
What is the whole spiel? There are a lot of ways that art can be therapeutic, and I'll typically
Hmm.
describe it to people in these two tracks, which is how the lineage of art therapy is typically described. So the main bifurcation is art as therapy. Inherently, the creative process is therapeutic. Just getting your hands moving, using different parts of your brain, giving your inner world space externally, like just doing that can help regulate a person, can help move through something. Or there's art psychotherapy, which is more diagnostic. And that's going to be more, we're looking at imagery, and there have been studies of looking at 400 versions of drawings. And that's just a guesstimate number, but, hundreds of drawings. and then parallel either any like psychometric data or interviews and analyzing. Are people who are voicing the same experiences typically drawing similar patterns? So we sort of draw on that collective unconscious pattern recognition between humans. So I think I also really preach that creativity is a transferable skill. That it's not, creativity isn't just art making. You know, when you are engaging in art making, you're engaging in risk taking, you're engaging in organization, you're engaging in distress tolerance. Like there's so many parts of your whole being that are utilized that inherently, if you have to problem solve outside of the creative process, you've got more practice doing that. So it's similar to how, of course, meditation is something that we do when we're on the cushion, but the main perk is how it benefits you in the outside world. And I think that art really is the same way. So art therapists, I mean, because it's such a small discipline, it looks in so many different ways. But that's my main shtick, is really just teaching people that it's a way of self-intimacy, it's a transferable skill.
I love that. Yeah, I thought you were gonna say it was contagious. Like, if you're creative and you're around other people who don't feel creative, you can kind of like transfer that as well. When you were saying transferable.
I wish. Yeah. But like transferable in that it's something that when it's done in in the actual art making, 2D, 3D, whatever it is, even if it's music, poetry, any of those, the skills that you're utilizing will be, it's not like they're just usable while you're making art. They come up in struggles in everyday life.
I like that. It's practice. And kind of like, I don't love the term like exposure therapy, right? It's kind of it's not a clean analogy, but there's a little bit there.
I see where you're going. I'm following you.
Yeah, like, do you really want to challenge yourself and take a risk? Here's a safe-ish way to take a risk.
Yeah, here's a contained, safe-ish way that even if you want to fold it up and put it in a box, it gets to go away.
Do you ever use art as like a device to ground somebody so that they can have a conversation?
Yeah, definitely. And the really cool thing about using art for regulation, so that's typically going to be practices that are more maybe using both hands, maybe using repetitive imagery, just getting someone's body moving tends to be where I go to with grounding. Really, well, this could be a whole rabbit hole too. The type of medium that you choose to support a person can aid in grounding, but even if somebody does not feel like they can talk, we can have an entire conversation that's deeper than word can, like traditional back and forth could contain, just by me asking, I'm noticing you're doing this in your image, and them saying, yeah, and then just following them. So that way there's a real like limbic resonance, a tuning back and forth. Content usually then comes out from there. If I'm just following their process, it's this really interesting phenomenon. And I think it's inner healing intelligence is a frequent word that we use in this field, that the psyche just feels safe and is like, okay, I'm seen. Can I get rid of this thing now? Usually, yeah.
I love that because it relates really well. Transpersonal art therapy, right? It's like, directly from, this whole transpersonal space, which is inclusive of psychedelics, holotropic breathwork, things like that. And this is the way I understand it too. And I never think about art on its own, but there's, offshoots like soul collage as a practice, which is similar way to like processing material. And there's some stuff there, and you can instantiate safety through the creative process, and that's like huge for sure. So I'm trying to think of like the origins. Do you think Jung was one of the first, or do you think there was other people before him that were integrating art into therapeutic attempts?
So art into therapeutic attempts feels really separate for me from art as non-ordinary state. Right? Or like art to capture non-ordinary state, art to capture big process.
and like there's some like really
Yeah,
interesting kind of non-ordinary like schools of thinking around art. Yeah.
totally. And also, indigenous communities have been doing that for healing with healing for thousands of years. So that
Mm.
is my first response. But
Mm-hmm.
if we're specifically talking in this westernized way, art in the therapeutic process, I once had a teacher tell me that Jung was the first transpersonal art therapist, but he just didn't know it. So his process with that, if people aren't familiar, he made this very, very large series of paintings tracking a deep descent into a psyche, which is called the Red Book. And that, I mean, you need like 2 companion books to even read through that thing, but it is for sure, um,
Mm.
I would say, one of the earliest displays. Besides that, it would be the outsider art movement.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know the exact
Like
years on that.
Basquiat, like that kind of deal. Or I guess that would be before or after Jung, because it's Warhol-esque timeline.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, that's interesting. Yeah, we got a comment here from a friend, Zach Knapp, um, and reminding us of dance and movement as art too, which is interesting, and that's
Yeah.
been around perhaps
Yes,
longer than we've been painting on
definitely.
caves, right? I'm thinking of like those French caves,
Yeah.
some of the oldest.
Lascaux.
That's it, I
Yeah.
think. Yeah, yeah. Like we've got cave art from forever ago that looks quite transpersonal and perhaps quite psychedelic. Um,
Yeah.
are you aware of anybody, to Zach's question here at the bottom, is there anybody doing kind of art, well, let's call it like movement workshops inside the Oregon psilocybin frame with mushrooms? I've not heard of it. It seems like it's a little too, I don't know, it's so niche. It's hard to probably get
Yeah.
customers already because of the pricing. But what's your experience there?
Uh, it's a little bit outside of my scope.
Yeah.
One really cool event that I did hear about in the psilocybin sphere, though, was somebody doing my understanding is that it's low dose, but a karaoke.
Mm.
So centered on helping people use their voice, sing songs that they have, maybe a deeper relationship with. But I think that's sort of one of the closest programs that I've heard of. And I think that's so cool. I'd be terrified to do it, but it sounds so cool.
We're actually bringing karaoke to Burning Man this year, Crabioke on our crab art car. So it's going to be quite a little weirder
Yeah.
than normal. So I'll report back with some findings if there are any. Um, so yeah, that's super cool. Like the embodiment of singing and just singing for
Yeah.
like voice finding things like that is so
Hmm.
powerful. I've healed a lot through singing. It's been pretty amazing.
Yeah. And it goes back to something that we were talking about before we started recording about community,
Mm,
that there's something about being witnessed in singing, but it doesn't have to be like something that you wrote. It can still be something that's meaningful, but there's an era of everybody getting to be the star for a moment and people getting to feel centered and witnessed. And it's like, yeah, on the surface, it's karaoke, it's super fun. But like you just said, being able to really hold that in the container of healing benefit, it's really impressive.
mm, totally. So yeah, there's a lot there. I dig that.
Mm-hmm.
I like how can you tell like a safe story about somebody who maybe was, using art to heal, like just an example, high
Yeah,
level. Um,
definitely. Hmm. Yeah, okay, cool. I finished up a integration. It was somebody who had come to me for preparation integration for out of the country journey work.
mhm.
So a lot of the work was around self-esteem and being able to witness themselves. I really love to set people up with an art practice that's so simple. It's at this point, it's really intuitive to me. Sometimes I give people the same general container, but it's pretty personalized. I had given this person a container of how do you start to open up your capacity to see yourself?
Yeah.
Because ayahuasca, whether you like it or not, is going to make you see yourself. So we ended up doing this practice, which I learned very, very early in graduate school, which involves sitting with a mirror and doing a blind contour of your own face. So really working with that metaphor of seeing. And the first couple, they were miserable because they're like, I can't conceptualize where this fits in my healing journey. I can't conceptualize where this fits. Like, I'm kind of annoyed at you for making me do this, but I'm going to stay with it. And that's my favorite, when somebody will participate, but is like, is this bullshit? Like, what's going on here? So anyways, they ended up sticking with the practice, finding access to mirrors outside of the country became a creative practice, whether it was their phone in a bathroom, just standing doing it. But the invitation was just a couple a week when you're really, really feeling voices of, self-hatred, discomfort in your own body, ways where you want to shame yourself. What if you just had to look at yourself for a minute and just track, like, my chin moves here and then it goes into my nose and here's that little crease above the eye. Like, it doesn't have to be good. No one has to see it, but you're just getting a neutral view on yourself. Mm-hmm. And when we reached our final integration session, she had maybe 50, I'd say, drawings. And noticing how they were in black and white pen, or black paper, white drawing, or the other way around. So she was just really working with this black or white. And then as soon as she got home from doing ayahuasca, she started using color. And that really, like, I just got so curious about that. Like, okay, where is this blue coming from? And the portraits just got more and more refined. They took maybe 1 or 2 minutes each. It's nothing incredibly detailed, but to have this data set of, you could see days where they really hated it. You could see where some interest actually got into play. And then it became of course, with the help of that non-ordinary state, it helped it all soften. And you can see more detail coming in. You can see that they maybe took more time. And, at the end of our time together, the client, I can only take a small. Our relationship did so much, but really also adding in this massive variable of days of working with ayahuasca really led to a lot of transformation about self-image and self-esteem. But that, I think, was one of the most interesting, miraculous, why didn't I get a photo release before type of seeing all of them laid out, and her being like, oh, I think that's where I stopped hating myself. Point blank, pointing at that drawing. I think that's where I stopped. Huh. That's really cool.
The feeling you must have had. Oh, wow.
You don't know how many sessions that I leave and I'm like, okay, you can cry now. And
that's extraordinary.
I think that it really highlights such a big value of art in the healing journey in general, to have that data set to see, wow, those are the colors I was using for this length of time. This is what I was using for this length of time. And to see, like, is there meaning? And it's like a dream. It's like a dream in that you can flip open a book of dream symbols and say, yeah, I dreamt of those 3 things and that's what they mean. And you can take that as fact if you want. Or you can do the depth, Jung, Hillman, let's unpack this symbolism. What does this mean to me? Art is sort of the same way that a good creative facilitator can just ask endless questions instead of trying to immediately jump to an interpretation. And to have that data set really helps somebody do that, right? Be so curious and figure out, like, what is actually happening for me.
Yeah, that's fun. And yeah, that's the work for sure. Is it any different for you when you think psychedelics are in the mix? Ketamine, mushrooms, or cannabis?
Most definitely. I think that the help of psychedelics usually creates a really clear pathway for regression. So what we call in the field of art therapy, regression in service of the ego. So being able to experience a regression, be making art and just have a warm presence with you, tracking you, meeting your needs. That non-ordinary state already creates room for that. What is it like to be cared for a whole day? What is it like to be cared for half a day? But when we're bringing in art making, the last time that somebody's body has existed in the space, felt vulnerable, felt altered, right? And had somebody just with them making art, it's usually pretty young.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting, and that makes sense to me too. Could probably make the sense of play a little easier, maybe.
Exactly. Removes a lot of barriers, a lot of negative self-talk.
So
for some people,
right, not for everybody for sure. It's I've seen a lot of people in holistic breathwork workshops where it's really challenging for them to even consider putting some sort of drawing or art instrument on paper. It's like very ego threatening, maybe, I guess. Fascinating to me, like that fear. I've always been like, I just never really thought I was going to do anything wrong. You know, I'm like, whatever. A couple splotches here and there, and a stick figure maybe, and we're good. But it's it's a device to help tell a story for me and reflect back upon, and yeah, it's fun and helpful for sure. So kind of curious, like what? So you're in private practice in Portland. Like what does that look like? Is it always art sessions with people? Is it often like talk, or is it like a mix of all of it?
It's definitely a really good mix right now. I'm in a bit of a lull, so I mean, it's sometimes nice to just have a small practice and be able to work on other things, but most of my practice is going to be people in the LGBTQ community, and people who are navigating relationships with substances. I think for a while there was a self-esteem milestone that I was inching towards reaching of like just really pushing art therapy. But while I wasn't 100% sure, because I'm completely private pay right now, how much people would want that. So I leaned a lot more into harm reduction therapy at first and somatic therapy at first, because those are things that seem to be more popular buzzwords. But as of late, I've really, really been pushing art therapy. So it's slowly more artists, more creatives. But even if people aren't artistically oriented, I'll find ways to bring art in. Like that magical place where someone says, I don't really know how to put this into words, or I don't really have much to say today. Then we give some sort of creative push, and content usually arises. So there are some clients who I will do really devoted multi-week long projects with, continual, same project, different, getting multiple views on it. But I think for the most part, yeah, it's a lot of integration. It's a lot of harm reduction. I've been loving lately mentorship. I'm loving mentorship and education, just because this is what I love talking about, and I can only work with so many people. So I think a lot of my efforts as of late have been really going towards that of like, okay, if psychedelic art therapy is its own thing, like who are the lineage holders? Who are the people who have informed this? And what are the founding, theories of it? Like, what am I weaving together to make this solid base? That's been taking up my mental space, my dream space, my art space, everything in between. But yeah, the private practice is a treat. It is so fun because I feel like so many of my clients are so motivated. Even people who are having super big experiences, the feeling of getting to connect people with tools that work, tools, helping them find the tools that work for them, right?
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, thanks for explaining that. And you also do some interesting stuff with the VA. What's going on there?
Yeah. Slow and steady. That's where I'm headed after this. I am a study therapist. I'm a study therapist for a group study, which is MDMA to treat PTSD in transgender and gender diverse populations.
Amazing. Amazing.
Yeah.
And this is the first study of its kind, as far as I understand, right?
So actually, our lab is doing just an MDMA assisted group therapy trial first with veterans.
Mm-hmm.
So that is my understanding, one of the first. And then this concurrent study that we'll be running will just be focusing on transgender and gender diverse populations.
That's epic.
Yeah.
How many people are you working with to put that together?
So the people who are building that out,
Mm-hmm.
oh my gosh, it is a village. It is a village, and I am just the tiniest little piece of that village, but there are the VA. I'm amazed. I'm amazed that even in this giant, industrial complex, that there is this little lab that has the sweetest, like psychedelic loving, professional, but also real. Like, I never, ever, ever thought that I would work for the government. But I feel like those of us who have been in the psychedelic field for a really long time, like I feel like an anomaly because it's been 9 years that I've just been pushing the same button. And there reaches a point.
That's a good analogy.
There just this. It's still this. It's still this. There reaches a point where what does impact look like? Do I want my impact just to benefit me? Do I want to just do this small work, or do I believe in this so much that I want to make greater access to it? So groups feel like that for me. Just that, and especially being at the VA, this devotion of I care about this enough that I want to be a person that helps get this to the next phase.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What is the next phase that you think? What would you like to see? I know there's some sort of interesting dynamics between like MAPS and the VA. The VA historically has not wanted to necessarily participate in the MAPS frame. They wanted to kind of do it their way. But I think there might be some sort of like middle ground there. But in your vision, what is like the next step look like for this getting implemented?
Yeah. I mean, how many years have we been patiently waiting for MDMA?
A few too many.
My hope is that it just continues to become more available. And it's to answer that in the simplest way. It breaks my heart that people have to go through so much red tape. People have to either give these large amounts of money or, I would love to see insurances cover it. I would love to see this actually be affordable and accessible for people. And I want to see more than just therapists and doctors facilitating. Like, I don't think there's going to be any shortage of people who want to use non-ordinary states for healing.
Right. Agreed.
So it's really just affordability and accessibility, because it's something I struggle with so much. Of I offer this really niche thing and I deserve to be compensated well for this niche thing, and this takes so much time and work, and the people that I want to work with, that I'm very skilled at working with, how do we deal with that, that financial barrier? So I don't know what we're waiting for, but
participating
hopefully
in late stage capitalism is quite complicated these days, and yeah, let's drink to that.
Drink experiment tea to that, brother.
So one thing that I'm really excited about is the prospect of figuring out ways to do group MDMA work, and perhaps using pre-existing organizations. Like I'm really bullish on healing a lot of people through church organizations. I'm
Yeah.
a little hesitant around religious organizations for a lot of, personal reasons, but I also think like there's a lot of possibility there and promise. So, what do you think about like the prospect of group work, either with MDMA or perhaps with like a ketamine?
That's my bread and butter. I love it. I think that groups are so actually you pointed out something that I really love, which is every single person who is passionate about creating space, facilitating, organizing is going to have their own hyper specific niche.
Hmm.
And there are going to be people who need that, right? Like it's the best feeling in the world when I'm searching for a support group for a client and it's like, wow, here's the intersection of one of your favorite hobbies and something that you're working on. That's really
Hmm.
cool. Somebody was brave enough to put that out into the world and now your needs are so met.
Hmm.
So I'm really just excited for that, for people to feel agency in playing with groups.
Yeah.
I feel like that's kind of the attitude that we're starting to have at Sequoia Center, the nonprofit ketamine clinic that I'm a founding member at. Um, it's so special to just have a bunch of facilitators be like, okay, you care about men's work, you care about men's work. We both care about art. You care about art and mindfulness. So we should, like, a bunch of therapists just getting to actually drop in and be like, here's all the stuff that we actually have the resources to do. Like, let's play.
Hmm.
And to have that energy of like, we have the container, we have the doctor, we know the ketamine, our intake process is, pretty good. The needs are met. Let's actually do the
Hmm.
thing and see what works. Like, that's what it was like with my first ketamine. I did a group last summer, which was ketamine assisted art therapy, just for members of the LGBTQIA community. And
Hmm.
like, honestly, shout out to a man who reached out to me and told me that I was gatekeeping because I wasn't letting him participate because he was straight. But anyways, just like shout out to that guy. Um, so it's interesting, right? Because some people do feel left out or not considered in these hyper specific niches, but
Hmm.
when they land for people, they're outstanding. And it was a short group, but just to see the difference in how people felt safe to be in a room when they knew that
Hmm.
somebody wasn't going to, there's a high likelihood that no one was going to fuck up their pronouns. And there was a high likelihood that if they wanted to process something related to the process of transitioning or something related to, identity exploration, that people were like, yeah, me too, and this. So
Hmm.
it was just really stunning to see. For me, it was like, oh, obviously that would be so cool. Just like hang out with a bunch of gay and queer and trans people for a couple weeks, and we'll just like build community and talk about identity and journey together and see what happens. So I think there's a seriousness in that too, right? I'm dotting all my I's and crossing all my T's, but just to be able to feel excited about a concept and going for it, I think is going to become more and more accessible as we build out systems of people can recognize in their community who are the safer facilitators, right? Who are the facilitators that are more affordable? Who are the people that you resonate with? Like, I think there are these natural nets arising in communities and states and regions of the country, but yeah, I think
Hmm.
the more steady that this gets, there's of course the never-ending ways that the psychedelic field is going to keep getting consumed by the beast of capitalism. But there are also these little pockets to have fun, and
Hmm.
I'm really trying to take advantage of those.
Right. Yeah. We can cry all day, but at a certain point, it stops being productive, and we need to just go. Have you seen the film or heard of the film A Table of Our Own yet?
Oh my gosh. So, yes, did you see it this last
I
week?
just saw it Thursday in Denver. Yeah,
Was
extraordinary.
it at the sea, the Psy?
I've never been in there until Thursday. Yeah, it's an exquisite venue. What a film! Blew my socks off. I'm gonna be an evangelist for a while on that one.
Please.
Have you seen it yet?
So I haven't seen it yet, but
Mm-hmm.
I think one of my dearest friends was on a panel for it, is in it. Gabe.
Yeah. I got to meet
Gabe
Gabe
KS is what he
again. I've
goes
met
by.
Gabe a few
Yeah.
times in the past, but I got to see him again. It's great.
Yeah. Him and Evan are a dynamic duo.
Yeah. Finally got to meet
Yeah.
Evan
What
as
did
well. It was
good? What
what
did
a
you love about
film.
it?
So it was very similar to how you were just talking about. Kind of affinity groups, I'll call it, like people that understand each other's needs better than your traditional white bread American would. And um, there's just some really good shit there. And it was like there's limitations to how the yeah, we're getting there, Zach. Sorry, people are commenting, Alyssa here all over, so trying to track them all.
Oh,
So
hey.
the film is it's about a
Mm.
kind of retreat that happened up in Napa, where a number of leaders in kind of the black psychedelic space got together to say, why aren't we being included? Why aren't our concerns being discussed? Why is it that there's so little black folks in the research at MAPS? Like a lot of important fundamental questions for us to be all on the same page going forward. And how, since we're not being included, how can we just create a table of our own? That's the title of the film, Table of Our Own. Amazing. And yeah, it's just like their experiences going through the process of encountering psychedelia and self-development, discovery, healing, um, their relationship to like white culture and how that feels to them, and it's just amazing. And I learned a lot, but I was thankful that I was like uh, pretty strongly in agreement on I think almost every point they made. Of course I have a little nuance here and there, but like largely it was extraordinary. And the depth of the conversations, the depth of the suffering that you could feel come through, all of it was just so amazing. So I think it's a foundational film around like how do we want to work as affinity groups, um, or for like the black psychedelic culture, how do they want to go forward from here? It's
Yeah.
amazing, and I'm just really excited that it happened, and that there's progress happening on that front. We had a number of the filmmakers on the podcast a couple years back, I think. So I've been waiting for it
Neat.
forever. Yeah, a lot of relation to like what you were just chatting about like queer affinity groups and psychedelic
Yeah.
spaces, and this like gatekeeping concept is so like crazy, you know
Yeah.
like we need to
Yeah.
really understand how much suffering and gatekeeping has happened for marginalized communities. And
Yeah.
guys, you're white in America, like calm down.
Yeah. And like how to recognize that the amount of gatekeeping that has happened, there's also it's okay for communities who have been historically harmed and marginalized to desire a separate like a space that is held for them by them.
Totally.
That like that was something that really touched me about the ketamine groups, was that there was just a common theme of like we have each other, like we are restoring like our lineage holders who have been killed or harmed, or were impacted by the HIV and AIDS epidemic, like the people that we consider our lineage holders. We're helping get back on track by sitting with each other, by grieving with each other, by giving each other resources. Like we are actually rebuilding strength. And sometimes that can't be done when there's a threat in the room. And that is one version of what a container can look like in a specific time. I don't think that has to be a rule across the board, but I think it's really precious to be an active steward in giving people an experience of safety. And other people look like me, other people talk like me, other people know a little bit more to make me feel safer when people feel historically harmed and misunderstood and used as the butt of jokes. Or yeah, I mean, Thank you for putting the A Table of Our Own back on my radar. I have perpetually felt like a bad friend for not seeing it yet. So
I think it's streaming any day now. So if you go on their website, they
cool.
might have some information. You can just catch it online. I think they're screening in Los Angeles, Boston, and I forget the third city. I'm sorry, everybody. But check it out,
It's okay.
tableofourown.org, I think it is. And it's an epic film. I'm going to watch it probably 5 more times. So I'm excited.
I'll shoot you a
Yeah.
text after I finish it.
Oh, amazing. Yeah. And we wanted to talk about art and like nonviolent aspects and then also community art. Like how do you ever tackle those two together? Those two topics?
Yeah, totally. Totally. So when I say how to work with art nonviolently, I mean, even looking at a child's art, one of the most damaging things you can say is this a blank?
Mm,
Even just identifying something in somebody else's art can rob you of that intimate back and forth of like, what is that to you? And when we're like, can you describe this to me? Because somebody, if you think about where art comes from, like what a rabbit hole. Like what if I'm just doing, I'm letting my hands pick a color and I'm just trusting my body, like where is that coming from? And something may resemble a tree, but somebody could also tell you this. As I was doing this, I was thinking about the tree that's outside of my grandmother's house. And when I was a little kid, that tree was the safe place for me. Like when you can ask more questions, there's such a way to learn more of their landscape, learn more of what's important to them, what they're afraid of, what they're passionate about by asking them to tell you. So I know that in this current moment in time, violence is we live in like a hyper violent culture. So it is a bit, it just still is the word that lands. So I'm mindful of using that word in this present point in time. But to me, it feels like such a disruption of somebody could just say, is that a tree? Yeah, that's a tree. But then you miss this whole wide realm. So it's a big thing that I'm passionate about teaching is what type of questions to ask, how to engage in a way, what's the boundary between a facilitator holding space for art and an art therapist, and how to like stay within your scope, but also how to ask questions that help somebody know themselves better.
mm.
So that is what I mean by nonviolent, that it can just be a really jarring closing thing, especially if you're wrong, right? Especially if you're like, what's this? Is this a blank blank? And they're like, no. And now I feel like a bad artist and now I'm not sure. Or I can just tell you that it is what you think it is to make this less awkward. Like to approach somebody's process and be like, I know what this is hard, right? Or even saying things like, I like this about your art. I always try to say, I notice this, because it's so much more neutral, because a positive judgment is still a judgment.
Mm-hmm.
If we're saying that's good, are we saying that everything else is bad? Like there's so much importance in the subtle ways that we engage with somebody's creative process. And I think mindfulness around that could really help some facilitators have that be a tool in their tool belt without it being, I'm an art therapist now, I'm an art facilitator, but rather like, yeah, if you are feeling nonverbal, here's this thing, and here's how I can talk to you about it, where your process is really going to be seen.
It's beautiful. And how does that relate to maybe like community art? Because you're doing art together. And I know we have to wrap soon. It's probably not the best time to ask a big question like that.
I know. I love that we keep doing these live streams and podcasts, and as we're ending, we're like, okay, well, here's another 30 more questions. Come back to that in another 2 years or so. God, it's in our bones. It's in our bones to be in community. I had the sweetest reflection given to me yesterday when I was facilitating a community art space. Somebody said, this is so great for shy people, because I can be in my art and I can look up and I can even just ask, can you pass me that? right? How did you do that? But I'm still in my safe little world, but I can poke out. So I think for people because I'm also holding the context of global pandemic, people experiencing all sorts of different stressors, like any of the stress in the world that pushes us towards isolation, that I don't really feel like there's a lot of community acknowledgement that I've seen that normalizes. Yeah, I kind of became more socially awkward, or yeah, it is really hard to be in community spaces now versus like 3 years ago, it didn't feel like this to me. So I think as a culture, we are still reeling from such deep isolation and such deep fear, on top of all of the other stressors that we're dealing with communally, globally, etc. But I find that it gives social connection. You're getting all the benefit of being in your creative process, but we get to learn from people and be inspired by people, and also be safe in our own little world if, eye to eye, body to body feels too intimidating. Like we could talk about art, but we're still talking, right? I'm still feeling heard. I'm still co-regulating with a bunch of strangers, but we're talking about how funny this card is, or how cool this one image that I found is. Like, there's an innocence to it. There's the right amount of distance and space for people who are either naturally more socially quiet, or for people who over the last couple of years have become a little bit more withdrawn. I think it's a really beautiful offering for everyone, but that's where I'm really seeing the benefit as of late.
Amazing. All right. Well, Alyssa, thank you so much for being here. Could you give us the name of your most amazing domain, your website?
Psychedelic Art Therapy. Psychedelic Art Therapy. There's two T's.
.com?
Both T's are there. .com. Yes.
Beauty.
And I've got the Instagram to match.
Wow. Lap of luxury. Amazing. Beautiful. Well, thank you again.
I know. Thank you.
for being here and doing this, and I hope we can do more. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
It'd be a treat. Thank you.
All right. Bye, everybody. Thanks for tuning in.